It'll be quick.
Send for the Chief Executive, right? Where's the Chief Executive? That's right, I'll present his report, right?
Take it as read.
Oh, that's the Chief Executive, right. Okay, Darren. Item 8.6 is your report, where you give us your view of the world, so to speak. So I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, I'm quite happy to take the report as read, with just a few comments. If I think about health and safety and the challenges that we face on a daily basis, we're seeing more reports of aggressive behaviour from our communities, and it's fair to say that I know certainly I've experienced or I've seen, both at work and personally outside of work, how people's behaviours have changed towards any form of regulation or organisations that have statutory obligations that they have to work to. And so we are really mindful of how we deal with that. Noting that what we do in our everyday roles is not life critical. And so that is at the front of mind for our people. If I use a building officer or a building inspector as an example, if they turn up to a site and there's aggressive behaviour, it's not the end of the world if we don't do that inspection. In fact, it doesn't affect us. It affects the builder. And so that is what I'm pressing upon the organisation. And it's not just about our front of office people, it's also in our back of office where we are starting to see more aggressive type of language in emails, which is of concern. And so I've asked Diane to look at implementing an organisational-wide program of training of how we deal with conflict and understanding what de-escalation looks like for us. And so that's something we will be tracking with into the future. We talked a little bit earlier about our capital works program and the escalation in cost, the delays in supply lines, and what that is doing for our delivery. And if I'm being honest, there are some challenges that we face there. We're having to front load some of our capital works programs, which are having an impact again on that balance sheet, and we are starting to see that. But it's not unique to us, and so that I guess is the message there. If it was something that was affecting us, I'd be far more concerned than the concern that I have, and we regularly discuss that. I think about the number of central government reforms that are ahead of us. And the fact that we have very little control as to what that suite of reforms look like. We have an opportunity to provide feedback to those reforms. At times I would question, I guess, the validity of or what level of acceptance or even respect that local government receives at times in relation to those reforms. And then we have a national election in October, which could change the landscape or not dramatically for us as we set down a path of reform. And I reflect on the Three Waters program, which recently became the Affordable Waters program as we shifted from 4 mega entities to 10 more regionally focused entities as a program of work. And in the background, we work with our mayors here across the Wellington region to understand how collectively we will approach that reform to set ourselves in the best place possible for when transition does occur. Again, remembering that that transition will be legislated and something that's taken from our decision-making capabilities. So I guess those are some big questions that we face every day. And as I've said, I'm happy to take questions in relation to the report. Thanks.
I just raise a general. I think this is a comment and a question, but I'm particularly struck by your reference in number 18 about business continuity of core services and all that's been affected in Hawke's Bay, Auckland, previously in Nelson and other West Coast and other places. I mean, there is a real big issue about asset resilience, and there's also a real big issue about emergency management changes, which I think are in the pipeline, taking a holistic view towards this whole question of retaining services. If you don't have electricity, then you don't have pumps, or unless you've got generators, standby generators. You don't have cell phones. You don't have banking. You don't have petrol pumps. So this issue of electricity supply resilience is telecommunication supply continuity. All of these things really make a bad situation worse. So it's not just a council issue. It's a community-wide issue in a sense. So what I'm raising is just, I mean, this is the second meeting I've chaired, and I think this is a great committee. But we go through certain sort of set items each month. We've got a new one here, which is insurance, which is a key one. Is there and so I'm just raising this as an issue. I don't expect discussion now. Is there a role for this committee to be a little bit more proactive in issues of asset resilience and in terms of cross-cutting emergency management services or whatever, given some of these things are in train? That's all. I just mentioned this as an issue for thinking about and discussion in the long term. I think there could be, if council so willed it, a role for us to take a more active part on that particular key risk, which talks about continuity of services and infrastructure and so on. Just raise as an issue for discussion. I don't know whether you want to make a quick comment, Darren, but I'd be happy to draft up something for discussion in November if people thought that this was an issue thinking about.
Yeah, look, it's a really good point that you raise, and again, it's something that we as a strategic leadership team are constantly discussing and wanting to ensure that we know that we have an ability to provide some business continuity, but over a longer period of times we will struggle. And when things are taken out of our control, such as electricity, we will find that we're in a very, very different place. But we do have some contingency with backup generators. But I'm more than happy to have that discussion.
Well, yeah, if there's some support for this idea, I'd be happy to float something for discussion at pops it with you beforehand. But if it's decided that it's worthwhile looking at, we could discuss it in November.
Yep, more than happy to do that.
Any violent disagreement? Any violent support?
Good idea. Good idea.
All right. All right. I'll take that as a general indication of approval to have a look at it. All right. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Thank you. It's kind of easy to say, I notice it, acknowledge it, and accept it, and then move on. But what is there anything you'd like us to think about apart from the very good suggestion of David's? I mean, are you wanting to look, maybe not from us, but from full council for an endorsement of a zero tolerance attitude to aggression and making it public, or is that going too far? I mean, there's plenty of people. There's mental health issues and things. I know not everybody but if one of your staff in the library or the counter's been belted on the head, it doesn't really. The mental capacity of who hit them is a secondary issue, really. You're looking for anything you'd like from us to recommend or to encourage you to do, or I'd just like to leave it open to you. What's the big thing that worries you each day? I hope this doesn't happen today, and is there anything we can do about it?
Thank you. Thanks, David. Good question. Look, we do have the full support of our councillors, which is really important. We have some policies in place so that our people understand that they have the full support of this council and the executive behind them. So we have those measures already in place. What's really important for us is continuing to reinforce that for us, it's our people's safety and well-being that should be at the front of their mind every time they either leave the office or they deal with someone through other means of communication. And we're building that culture. You know, that's coming. And we're also building a culture, coming back to an earlier comment from Councillor Cooper, of reporting, information in, information out. And so that is another key piece of work for us. We've got a really proactive health, safety and wellbeing committee led by staff and well attended. So thank you for the support, but I am really happy with the support that we currently receive.
Yes, good, thanks.
Through you. Thank you. I just wanted to comment on the last point about resilience. With the Mayor looking at me across the table, to note that we do have some work underway, which we're calling recovery, but it's very much in that resilience space. So if it's useful, we could connect in and if you'd find it useful, could bring it to here, because we've got a series of workshops that we're planning with councillors around that very topic, and what action we'll take to include it in some of our upcoming strategies around how we're managing for resilience in the community, and in the way that we're even structuring things like our development contribution policy and other such things as input into the next long-term plan.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. I'd be happy to be involved in any discussion. I think David would probably be happy to be involved in any briefing you want to provide on this resilient strategy that you're developing. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Okay. Yep. Anything else? Well, in that case, I move. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair. And I think I may have been covered by what Chris was just talking about as well, because one of the things I wanted to bring up was, fantastic around the emergency recovery response and all those aspects of things, having resilience in that space. But I do wonder, when I flagged this a couple of times, we start having that conversation around environmental impact on infrastructure. And I use groundwater or weather events as an example. When we start thinking, we'll have to start thinking a bit differently in our delivery of infrastructure, whether there's a risk component around that. I perhaps use the example of hydro neutrality as a very strong council policy, but how long can we stick water back in the ground if it's coming up? Just issues like that. They're big issues, they're huge issues. But just want to flag that that point of having to get those discussions seems to be coming closer and closer. And at what point do we do that as such, and it start affecting our policy around what we are delivering as such? I'll park that there. That's just wanted to add that into the equation.
Sorry. Nobody else? Right. Well, would somebody else move that we receive? The Mayor, Janet moves, second by Jocelyn, that the Mayor's report be, the Risk and Assurance Committee receives this report. In favour, say aye, contrary no. I'm sure it's carried. All right. Thank you very much. Right. Okay. Top 10 organisational risk report. Who's in charge of the presentation here? Mark. Okay, Mark. Where you go, right? You're a busy man this afternoon, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, take the report as read, and we'll go to questions. And between myself and my fellow group managers, we will try and answer all the questions, depending which ones are raised.
Well, I have to say again how much I like these diagrams, particularly when they're in colour. And we know that our objective is to move from the top down and then across to the left to get everything in that direction. But so far, it says here in paragraph 8, there are no changes to any of the residual risk ratings, which is a bit disappointing. I mean, what we want to see is something dynamic over time anyway, not every quarter. But that's our objective. But I just want to repeat how useful I find this approach to setting out the issues. Okay, any questions or comments to Mark on this? Yes, Glenn.
Yeah, hi Mark, I just had the one. I see ORG 3, failure to give effect to the and our obligations to iwi hapu Māori. I see our target is moderate and our current is high. Considering the well, I thought good work that the council had progressed in the space, that isn't reflective of the relationship, or is it reflective of the relationship with our treaty partners?
I wonder who should respond to that.
Darren.
Or,
Sorry.
or the Mayor, I'm not sure.
Thank you. So I guess if I think about where we were and where we are now, we still have work, as we can hear. We still have work to do. We have our 3 mana whenua partners who form Te Whakaminenga o Kapiti, who are well engaged, and the discussions that we are having at that committee are far and wide in relation to what we are talking about and what it is that we're covering, rather than specific to. Set that aside, I still wonder how effective we are being in regard to meeting our partnership relationship expectations in relation to Te Tiriti. And so that is the big piece of work that we have to progress. We're about to set upon reviewing the memorandum of partnership, as part of that committee review, which again will contribute to reduction in the heat map or lowering the risk. Acknowledging that we have a new group manager who has recently started, Hara Adams. She has a big program of work ahead of her, and so you will start to see some real shift there as we start to implement the change. But I'm fairly happy with where that is sitting at the minute, noting how much resource we've been able to apply in our partnership space. But again, noting that we haven't seen any shifts since the last time, we will start to see some focus and some shift.
Bernie, you're next, right?
Sorry, just through the chair again.
Sorry,
just if you could just comment, Darren, on the target being moderate and not low. It might be semantics, but
Yeah, gotcha. And again, as we start to progress, these are living documents, so we will see that shifting. Yeah,
Could I just add a comment before I call you Bernie? I'm involved in another board which is grappling with this very issue itself, and the real problem is, what does success look like in this one? Very hard to define what success is. It's a very steep hill to climb. It's a very broad hill, and we're still struggling with it. I think everybody is struggling with this issue, and that will reflect the fact that it doesn't show that we've achieved everything yet. We haven't achieved success, and that'll take a long time. But just a quick comment on my part. Bernie, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my question is to Mr. Church. It's about cybersecurity threats. Organisation 7. So when you look at cybersecurity threats, are you just looking at information, people trying to access council information, or is it a bit wider than that, broader?
We're looking at external threats, so threat actors from across the world. We're looking at internal, I'm not going to say threats is the wrong word, but one of the biggest issues is actually our own staff in terms, and I mean that in the way that they conduct themselves in terms of phishing emails, all those things that might get through. So for example, we block around, I think it's around 4,000 to 5,000 emails a month coming through as spam emails, phishing emails. And to put that into perspective, around 80 to 90,000 emails a month we receive at council, so it's a reasonable percentage. The other thing that we do, we have a number of things in place to monitor our cybersecurity posture, and I think off the top of my head, in the last 6 years, we've had 4 reported incidents, minor incidents. So it's we've got a pretty strong program going on.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, a couple of comments from me. The Org2 risk, failure to adequately maintain social licence. There's a bit of a waffly action thing there about work is underway to better understand social licence and develop an approach and associated work program. Got no idea what that really means, but it's not due until when is it? Q1 23-24 it says. A draft program, yeah, that seems quite a way out. And I think, one of the issues there, and it relates back to this aggressive behaviour thing, it's about council reputation and this whole anti-bureaucracy, and councils know blooming good and they don't perform, and, and then we've got all this fear-mongering going on with the Coastal Advisory Panel and so on. Yeah, I think that's worthy of some further exploration. And I know we're doing a lot of work on, customer satisfaction type measures. I'm just wondering if we can, progress that side of things a bit more. In relation to the iwi relationships, one thing that isn't mentioned there really is capacity of iwi to respond to our request to engage in consultation with them, and whether we are able to support iwi in that sense. And my third comment is in relation to climate change challenges. There is a massive list of actions there, and I have said on a number of occasions, are we under-resourced in that area to be able to, because that's one where we're at the extreme end, and where we need some urgent attention, and are we sufficiently resourced in that area to help reduce our organisational risk. So those are 3 points from me.
Yep, thank you. Thanks, Liz. Point 1. So that's work that we're undertaking now, first quarter of this current financial year, 23-24 year. So you'll see that coming back shortly. This is month 2 of quarter 1. So we'll bring that back pretty quickly.
Oh, okay. So it's like, right. So it's quarter of
financials.
Right,
yep.
It is too. Yes, I
Yep.
was thinking 24.
Yeah. So
it's a long way away. Yeah. No, you're right.
so iwi partnerships and capability or ability post and pre-settlement. Yeah, there is huge challenges there. We have funding that we provide to ensure that our iwi partners are able to respond. That's provided on an annual basis. So, and again, we are seeing some, I guess, a new chief executive, Te Atiawa ki whakarongotai, and the relationship there is changing very quickly in relation to engagement and response. So Frank, Hara and I and the wider team are really starting to see some change there. Climate change, you're right, there's always a balance between being overly optimistic and I guess realistic in what it is that we are able to do. And if there is a common theme with the challenges that you lay at our feet, it is asking us if we are resourced enough to do what we are saying we are going to do. We've seen an increase in our staffing levels in the last 6 months, where we now sit around the 400 mark. So that is coming as we have an active employment market, although that is starting to tighten. We've seen some changes in our sustainability team, and so we're working through that. There's always peaks and troughs throughout the year, and it seems to be cyclical with the seasons. It just seems to be winter. Winter is the days are shorter and the nights are longer, and people don't tend to be as active. Whereas as we come into spring, the end of August, we'll see a bit more activity around the shop. So and I guess coming into the long-term planning cycle, there will be some hard questions that we have to debate in relation to what does our bottom line look like, what is affordable for this council, and what does that mean for our levels of service and how we engage with our communities. Noting that it's normally your staffing numbers that are the first thing that you look at. So a piece of work that we kicked off last week in transformation will help us to ensure that we are fit for purpose for the future.
Sure, no, that's no problem. The question was asked earlier, and it just has piqued my curiosity. So I just want to try and be clear about the question, because I'm hoping it's simple. Is it within the range of acceptable prudent management for council to be making unsecured loans? I just wasn't sure we got an answer before, and I was just curious about that.
Well, it's not for this committee, but it's certainly for yes, I know. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Way you go, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Yeah.
A couple of comments on that is it's a concessionary loan, so it is unsecured, and it is clearly reported in the annual report. The accountants did impair it, but it clearly states in the annual report that the obligation, Air Chatham still have the full obligation. Going back a couple of years before we issued that loan, I can absolutely assure the committee that prudent steps were taken. We did a lot of due diligence on Air Chathams at the time, and we weren't alone. So it was a combined response for ourselves, Whakatane and Whanganui district councils. If council didn't intervene at the time, Air Chathams were not going to be flying into any of those regional airports. So we independently did our due diligence. We looked at the forecast cash flows of Air Chathams. We also considered the fact that they received grants from central government, and we looked at the future cash forecasts that Air Chathams were saying they were going to deliver. We have an annual monitoring regime in place with Air Chathams. We speak to them regularly, and so at the moment it couldn't be secured at the time. If we asked for security, Air Chathams were in a position where they couldn't provide security. That was the fact of the matter. It was a response to COVID to keep the airline going. And that was a decision that was put to council and was made by council. So we did act prudently. We're not in the business of giving unsecured loans, but we'd never faced COVID-19 before, or the challenges. We'd never as a council had to respond to COVID-19. So there is a lot of due diligence in place. It is prudent, it is well monitored, and the obligation to fully repay that loan sits with Air Chathams, and they're well aware of that.
Okay.
The important thing is it was a council decision. Council can make these decisions considering the costs and benefits of the decision, and they decided that the benefits were worth the risk, I suppose, is what the decision was made. As to what's going to happen in response to the question asked by the gentleman attending, I mean, as I said, if the asset is, what's the word I'm looking for, impaired, then that will come out in the financial statements and the auditor's report, right? But it's a council decision, and councils are entitled to make those decisions and be accountable for them, as I see it, yeah. Okay, is that okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Makes sense.
Okay, well, we're making great progress. Internal audit, oh, sorry, somebody's got to move something here.
Actually, through the chair,
Oh, sorry, Jocelyn, sorry. I keep missing you. These lights are too small. It should, come up with some big noise or something so that I can actually, sometimes it's very hard to see. Right?
Thank you.
Anyway, nevertheless, Jocelyn,
Yes,
please
yeah,
proceed.
Yeah, thank you. So I suppose firstly, I think these heat maps are great, and in terms of seeing where things are, where they're going to move and where the target is. I just wanted to make a few comments about Org 4, which is inadequate mitigation and adaptation responses to known and future climate change challenges. And in here, I suppose being the chair of the Climate and Environment Subcommittee, I just wanted to make comment here that some of the consequences do actually relate to the environment, but when it comes to some of the risk treatments, none of them are actually mentioned. And I suppose the key one, a prime example of that is the whaitua work that is being done at present, which relates to one of the consequences being a reduced quality in water. So I'm just, so I suppose, and I know, so it's about, some people might consider that climate change and environment is the same, but to me they're actually quite different. But they do overlap. And it's actually about ensuring that some of the work that is being done in that environment space is recognised and actually highlighting, so they've been highlighted as some of the causes or consequences, but not actually included in some of the work that's actually being done. And there's probably other examples as well, but that's one off top of my head.
Who should respond to that?
I think it was a statement.
Oh, okay. I'd just say that, in fact, Org 4 was the one I had in mind when I was thinking about the possible role for the committee in terms of resilience, asset resilience, and emergency management resilience as well. I know that I've looked at the minutes of the climate committee. I forget the full name of it, I'm sorry, but it doesn't have any discussion on the sorts of issues that I was talking about there, nor I think about what you're talking about, Jocelyn.
Yeah, so maybe I will follow that up with a question. So why isn't anything about the whaitua kapari work included in this section in the report?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't see you. Oh, sorry. No, I'm looking at Chris, who's behind you.
Thank you. I think the intention with this risk, the way that we've framed it in advance of your comment, has been to focus on the climate change elements being things like severe weather events or changes that relate to what we would see as climate change impacts. That's not to discount that there are important environmental issues and challenges that we face. I think the way that we'd seen work around our awa related to the kapiti whaitua is there are real issues related to those things which aren't necessarily climate change. It might be the impact, and I'll use an example, it may be the impact of either the infrastructure that Greater Wellington or even this council manages or introduces that has impacts, or developers or others in the community that we're looking to manage and change. So those are real live issues. They're just not something that we considered was in scope for climate change.
So I suppose my other question too is then why is not the environment included in this when, for example, with the whaitua situation I've highlighted is that piece of work is potentially going to result in a plan change. So it actually has quite big implications. Yeah.
You want to respond?
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I just want to confirm, Jocelyn, are you asking the question, should there be a risk around the environment and our response to it, in addition to what we have? Yeah, okay. I would say that obviously responding to issues related to our environment and managing those issues is in your council top 10 priorities as things that you think are most important. And I think we have a number of actions underway around that. When we had considered our top 10 risks that we had to respond to, I think we had a longer list that we had essentially truncated down to our top 10. So they're on our list of risks, but some of the others, which mixed, I think, some organisational challenges or issues, as well as ones relating to our district as a whole, have made that top 10 list up. So I guess essentially it's important, it just is not on this risk list.
All right. David, the floor is yours. Yes.
Thank you. The Chief Executive rightly pointed out that we're into the first quarter of the year on this on Org 2 and social licence, and I just want to note a couple of things. One is that everything's connected to everything else, and things like the Chatham's loan, I'm not going to debate the merits of it, but I can see in the paper that it comes up every couple of weeks. A bit of that is social licence as well, explaining, getting that message across that what it was, what it is, what would have happened if it hadn't been done, is obviously still needs explaining to many people. And I just note that we're, as you said, Darren, we're into August for September, and it's 5% completed, so there's 95% to be done in about 7 weeks. I guess just, is it doable?
Well, the honest response is no.
Yes,
to that. So this is a live document, and like anything, we always have to adjust our timeframes. But we need to be realistic. We need to set some stretch goals. But when we aren't able to achieve those goals, we need to come back and reset those.
Fair enough. Yeah, it just struck me as pretty optimistic.
Right. I now propose to move, well, somebody please move, that this Risk and Assurance Committee receives and notes this report, including Appendix 1 to the report. Would somebody please move that? David, seconded by Glenn. Favour say aye, contrary no. That is carried. Okay, we're making good progress, team. We're getting towards the end. Golly, you're going for a fair while, right?
Just letting you know I have to go at 4. So.
Right. Thank you, Janet. Okay. Well, we have
but
now
feel free
two
to carry
items.
on without me.
Okay, we'll do our best. Okay, we'll do our best. Internal audit, Linda Guerin. Oh, Mark was going to talk to this. Right, that's right. Thank you, Mark. We last meeting we received a note of the work plan, which is actually set in discussion with the Chief Executive. So take us through what you think we need to know here, Mark, or we can take it as read, whatever you think.
Look, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's probably getting late in the day. I'll take the report as read. The work program's the same as the 16th of May report. The only thing that's changed since then is 2 internal reviews have been completed and are currently with the Chief Executive for review. Other than that, no major issues to note at all.
All right. Any discussion or questions? There appear to be none. Will somebody move that the Risk and Assurance Committee receives and notes the internal audit progress update on the work program for 2023? Moved by Liz, seconded by the Chair, or by the Mayor, all right? Okay, in favour, aye, contrary, no, carried. Okay, phew, we're making progress. The ratings, S&P ratings, right? We've already had a bit of an introduction to this. Jing here? Yeah. Do you want to make any comments on this? I mean, it's a good read. It's a good read, as I said before. They talk about they say some good things about Kapiti Coast District Council, actually, which is very, and then they say, yes, but, so, and that's, of course, what all credit rating agencies do. Nobody's perfect. It reminds me of a time I was having an argument with Whatarangi Winiata when he was chair. Yeah, I didn't. He said, David, that point you made has some merit, but not much, right? Anyway, here we go. Right, who would like to raise issues concerning this? I made a few comments myself, which I won't repeat, but there are some. It's worth a good read because, as I said, there's a good but. It's like an A- or a B+, right? In a sense, right?
Oh, I'm going to say I think this is a solid A, actually.
Solid A, all right.
Because we're working in an environment where a lot of councils either got downgraded or got negative outlooks. It's not just the internal debt issue that's fed into this negative outlook. It's also the environment in which we operate outside of council. So I think the staff did an excellent job presenting to Standard & Poor's. Mm-hmm. When we were going through the interviews, I was aware that they had some issues, particularly around what they communicated more was those external challenges rather than the internal. But what I do think is positive about the report is they have full faith that we'll be able to address some of these issues as we go through the long-term plan process. There's a air of optimism there that we're going to be able to get back onto a stable footing. So it's a negative outlook, but with a positive spin, is how I would put it.
No, that's very good. And I again express my disappointment that no reference is made to an excellent finance and risk and assurance committee. Anyway, that's by the by. Right. Right. Okay. All right. So in that case, if there's no look, I think it's still self, but it's a good read. It's a good read.
Yeah, I'll take that as my introductory comments and move the motion if you like.
So the motion is, of course, they will receive the report. Let me just read it out properly. That the Risk and Assurance Committee receives this report, including attachment 1, that the Risk and Assurance Committee notes the S&P Global have reaffirmed the Council's credit rating for 2023-24 as AA, but has advised that revised the Council's outlook from stable to negative, that the Risk and Assurance Committee notes that budgetary management concerns raised by S&P Global will be monitored and reported during 23-24 and taken into further consideration when developing the budgets for the long-term plan 2024-2034. So there we are. That sort of covers it all, doesn't it? Right? Right. Well, I'll move that. And Janet's moved it. Right. All right. Moved by the mayor, seconded by the chair. Okay. All in favour say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Right. We're just about at the end of the non-public of the public business. We've got the minutes of the last committee to approve. There should be one change, which is to note the late apology from Councillor Cooper. All right. So with that amendment, I will move. Where is it? Where the hell is it? I'm looking at my run sheet. That the minutes of the meeting be confirmed as a true and correct record. Right. Okay. Moved by David Cochrane, seconded by Jocelyn. In favour say aye, contrary no, carried. Okay, that completes the public business. If I can just find my run sheet, I'll read this. Yes, Martin? Jocelyn, yes. Now, where's my run? Where the hell is my run sheet?
Yeah.
Here we are.
So you just have to get a mover and a seconder to go into public excluded, more to no.
But I've got to read the whole thing out, don't I?
You don't necessarily. You can just move.
All right. There is some long form of wording which says we'll go into committee, but whatever it is, I can't find where it's been written down. So I will move that we would go into committee for the items on this agenda here, seconded by Liz Coe, right? All right. Favour, contrary, carried. Okay, we now move into the public excluded part of the meeting, which is the orange papers. People who do not need to be here are free to leave, right? Yep.